My name is Sarah. If we haven't met virtually before, thank you so much for joining me just for this little kind of half hour or so of a little bit of reading, a little bit of meditation on the magic that is the autumn season. I'll be using two books for my resources and reading today. The first one is my book, Kitchen Witch, Food, Folklore and Fairy Tale. This came out last year, I want to say. My time keeping skills are strange. I don't want to keep blaming the lockdown, but I can't think of time anymore in the same way since lockdown. Anyway, Kitchen Witch, I think came out last year, Food, Folklore and Fairy Tale. And then this year, with the beautiful Lucy H. Pierce, we created the Kitchen Witch Companion. So this is the recipes and the kind of the sister book to Kitchen Witch, Food, Folklore and Fairy Tale. So between the two of them, there are many beautiful tales and magic of food and ritual and embracing the magic within your hearth and your home. So these little Eventbrite events are just intended to share a few words and hopefully you can enjoy a few tales from these books and feel a little inspired. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today for this little journey of cozy tales with the Kitchen Witch. I hope that wherever you are warm and cozy, and feel free to take a pause if you want to gather yourself a hot drink or gather your favorite woolly jumper around you. And as we explore the magic and the superstitions around food, of course, here on Halloween, surely our thoughts may turn to the pumpkin and the idea of the jack-o'-lantern. One of the most familiar symbols of our modern Halloween is the glowing orange face of the carved pumpkin. But where did this tradition come from? Well, there is an old Irish myth about a blacksmith known as Stingy Jack, and some of our oldest folk and fairy tales are thought to involve a blacksmith, which is interesting. But this blacksmith, Jack, he tried to trick the devil. He offered his soul in exchange for a drink. But as the devil turned himself into a sixpence to pay the bartender for this drink that Jack had bartered for, Jack trapped him in his pocket as a penny. He trapped him until the devil promised him not to claim his soul for 10 years. Jack wanted 10 years grace from the devil. Well, the devil's trapped in his pocket, so he kind of has to agree. So he does agree, but 10 years later, he comes back to seek Jack's soul. But this clever Jack, I don't know how he keeps doing it, he plays another trick on the devil, and this time he traps the devil within an apple tree. Once more, he makes the devil make a promise in return for his freedom. So he asks the devil once more not to claim his soul for another 10 years. Unfortunately, Jack has not thought this through, because when Jack dies shortly after this apple tree incident, he is denied entrance to both heaven and hell, because God does not want these unsavory characters in heaven, so he turns him away. But then when Jack comes to the devil, well, the devil has promised not to take his soul, so he's not inviting him in either. And I think he's still probably upset by the tricks that Jack has played on him. So the devil sends Jack off into the night with only a lump of burning coal from the fires of hell to light his way. And depending on who's telling the story, Jack hollows out a pumpkin or a cabbage to carry that ember to give him light. And he has been roaming the earth ever since. And this ghostly figure was called Jack of the Lantern, which in time was shortened to Jack-o'-lantern. And this story was remembered each year in Ireland by carving faces into vegetables and placing a piece of burning coal inside. Now, when the Irish immigrants arrived in America around the 1840s, they took their Samhain and Halloween traditions with them, including this tradition of carving out pumpkins. But they quickly discovered that their jack-o'-lanterns were much easier to carve out from the native pumpkin, which was a fruit newly adopted to their American homes. So in time, the pumpkins replaced the turnips and candles replaced the burning coals. And because of the legend of Jack, for hundreds of years, people have carved vegetables and put candles within and placed them at their windows, perhaps to light their way or to scare away any malevolent wandering souls. To the modern kitchen witch, the pumpkin may symbolize protection, abundance as a harvest foodstuff, and maybe hope as a light in the dark. Maybe also transformation from foodstuff into magical lantern, and then back into foodstuff if you want to turn the pumpkin into a lovely soup once Halloween is over. Now, the pumpkin, to those of us who enjoy eating them, are earthy and sweet, and the bright pumpkin heralds in the season of autumn. Pumpkins feature in folklore all around the world. And pumpkins may contain, depending on the folk tale, evil spells kept within pumpkins for safekeeping or protection. In Chinese folklore, the pumpkin is an emblem of abundance and fruitfulness and good health. And sometimes pumpkins can grow so big that they inspire some quite outlandish fairy tales. I offer a fun little fairy tale. It is called The Conjuring Wives. Once upon a time, when a Halloween night came on the dark of the moon, the old conjuring wives were sitting by the fire and cooking a big supper for themselves. The wind was howling round like it does on Halloween nights. And the old conjuring wives, they huddled round the fire and talked of the spells they would weave come midnight. And by, there came a knocking at the door. "Who's there?" called the old conjuring wives. "Hoo hoo, hoo hoo." "One who is hungry and cold," said a voice. But the old wives, they burst out laughing and they called out, "We are cooking but for ourselves. Who would cook for you? Hoo hoo, hoo hoo." The voice didn't say anything, but the knocking kept on knocking. "Who's that a knocking?" called another conjuring wife. "Hoo hoo, hoo hoo." But the voice didn't say nothing, but the knocking kept on knocking. And the old conjuring wives, they called again, "Go away, do. Who'll cook for you? Hoo hoo, hoo hoo." And the voice didn't say nothing, but the knocking kept on knocking. And finally, one wife said, "Let's give them something to get them away before they spoil our spells." So the old conjuring wives, they took the tiniest piece of dough, the size of a pea, and they put it in a frying pan. But when this tiny piece of dough hit the frying pan, it began to swell and swell, and it swelled over the frying pan, and it swelled over the top of the stove, and it swelled out onto the floor. And the voice didn't say nothing, but the knocking kept on knocking, and the dough, it swelled and swelled over the floor. And the wives called out, "Who's that knocking at the door? Hoo hoo, hoo hoo." But the voice said nothing, and the knocking kept on knocking, and the dough, it kept a swelling, and the conjure wives began to shrink, smaller and smaller. Their eyes got bigger and bigger, and the knocking stopped. And the voice called out, "Fly out the window, do, for there's no room in this house for you." And the Conjuring Wives, they spread their wings and they flew out of the window and off into the woods, all a-calling, hoo-hoo, hoo-hoo. And now, if you go into the woods in the dark of the moon, you'll see the old Conjuring Wife owls and hear them calling, hoo-hoo, hoo-hoo. And every Halloween night, the owls turn once more into the Conjuring Wives a-weaving their magical spells. So that is one of my favourite little Halloween tales of magic and giant food. Always fun. And peas always sneak into fairy tales, don't they? It's interesting whether they are hidden under mattresses to seek out princesses, or to feed, or to expand. So what other food spells might we create this October other than pea-sized pieces of dough? Well, a simple recipe that you'll find in the Kitchen Witch Companion is that of mulled hot apple. And I will be sharing a recording of this recipe, so don't worry about remembering this now. But mulled drinks warmed with both spices and heat are often associated with the cold season, autumn and winter. In Germany, they call it Glühwein, meaning literally glow wine, and it's served at winter markets. And mulled cider and apple juice is very popular in England. It's sweet and warming, and the mulling spices might include orange, clove and cinnamon, perhaps a good measure of sugar or a splash of a strong spirit. In Scotland, it is called Yule Ale, made specifically for winter and often involving ginger and treacle for warmth and heat. And the practice of heating and spicing wine dates back at least to the ancient Romans and Greeks, where herbs were added and warmed for healing properties and flavour. If you wish to make mulled apple cider this winter, take perhaps a litre of cloudy apple juice, stir in a cinnamon stick and an orange sliced thin, add 8 cloves, a few cardamom pods, a star anise, and a few tablespoons of sugar. Put all the ingredients in a pan and cover. Warm them gently for at least 15 minutes to infuse before ladling into mugs to enjoy. Now just a snip of the Kitchen Witch magic for those ingredients are as follows. Star anise has a beautiful star shape and a strong aniseed flavour, and it is often used for rituals of purification and cleansing, and it is sometimes still burned in temples and sacred spaces. Cinnamon, a warming spice, is connected to the elements of sun and fire to bring heat even in dark seasons. Cloves, intense and aromatic. The little cloves are actually dried flower buds of the clove tree, and often used in folk medicine for pain relief. Sugar. Now, sugar has been demonized perhaps a little in the diet industry, but sweetness has always been a favorite of the fairy folk and the magically inclined, and a little sugar can sometimes bring a sense of magical indulgence and joy to your day. Oranges can represent sweetness, sunshine, and light. And finally, of course, apples in our mulled apple drink. Apples, crisp, sweet, and juicy. Apples are one of the most prevalent fruits found in myth and fairy tale from ancient times onwards into Europe and into the Middle East. They are rich with symbolic meanings and mythical associations, including wisdom, knowledge, fertility, and abundance. Apples might be associated with female deities and goddesses like Pomona, the Roman goddess and guardian of flourishing fruit trees, shiny apples and juicy pears, gardens and orchards. And in ancient artwork, we can see Pomona with her arms filled with fruit and bearing an apple crown, making sure that all around her blooms and thrives. So on the theme of those juicy apples and their abundance, I offer a second and final little folk tale. And this one is called The Curious Kitten and the Apple Tree Man. There once was a little farm kitten. She was curious about the fields on the edge of the farm that no one liked to enter, especially in the darkest months. Tall elder trees grew there, and whispering winds whirled around your ears. There's something bewitching about that place, the dairy maids would say, and on certain nights, the big black cats would stalk down to the trees with their witch mistresses. Now, little farm kitten, she wished to go too. So, she tried to find her way on Halloween when the witches meet, but she was too small to keep up with the big black cats. So when the eve of midwinter arrived, she decided to try again. And this time she got as far as the orchard. But the oldest apple tree in that orchard reached up his branches and he spoke. "You go back home, my dear. There's folk a coming to pour cider on my roots and shoot guns through my branches to scare away the witches. This be no place for you. You go back home and don't come a-wandering round on these dark nights of winter." The little kitten's tail was stiff with fright, and she took off home, and she never wandered out on a winter's night again. But it's said that other kittens did find their way to the witches and enjoyed the dark nights flying far above the apple orchards. That folk tale, as inspired by apples and wassailing apple trees, is a local to my area here in Somerset, so it's another one of my favourites. I know I said that about the last one. I'm pretty sure every tale is one of my favourites, but that's okay. So 2 little folk tales and a recipe. Now I thought we would finish with a little meditation if you wish to see it as such. Any story can be a meditation, any moment of pause, a ritual. So I'll call this one a meditation and you can close your eyes, but you are also equally welcome just to sit with your tea and be restful. This is a meditation from Kitchen Witch Companion. I should have bookmarked it. I know it's in here somewhere. Here we go, found it. So this is a seasonal meditation, an opportunity just to pause and celebrate the beauty of this season. Perfect for a quiet, dark, autumnal evening, which it is right now here in the West Country. I hope wherever you are is cozy and restful as well. If you wish to, close your eyes as we relax and settle and breathe. as the last golden light of the sun sets on an autumn evening, you find yourself walking through woodland that is resplendent in caramel shades of rich browns, yellows, and oranges. Leaves fall from branches, dancing around you as you walk and falling underfoot. You catch the scent of wood smoke in the air and the deep, rich forest smells of moss and earth and damp leaves. Through this beautiful woodland, you arrive at your destination, a wooden house amongst the trees. It is simple in design, but strong. Light glows from every window, inviting you closer. You slip through the front door and find yourself standing in a great wooden room. Like many ancient barns, the ceiling is tall and great beams arch overhead. Autumnal leaves have been gathered into great garlands to hang from these beams. A long table stands proud in the middle of this room. And it is abundant with food and treasures of the season. The great table is decorated with pumpkins of every size and colour, each holding a glowing candle in its belly. They have been carved with faces, animals, and imagery from nature, trees, clouds, suns, and moons. And around the pumpkins, swathes of leaves in every autumnal hue are spread out in great blankets. You see now that people are quietly gathering, carrying glass flagons of deep, rich liquids made of damsons, blackberries, and elderberries. Placed upon the table, they shine richly in lantern light. Others now arrive, bringing cakes made of apple and cinnamon still warm from the oven that scent the air. Still more people arrange cheeses and chutneys, steaming bowls of soup and stews with chunks of warm bread. Biscuits made with nuts of the season, crunchy and sweet. And these people hold out their hands for you to join them. Come now, gather, be warm. You gather quietly for a moment with peacefulness and respect, lighting candles held in golden holders. When all is ready, you gather round this table and raise a glass as we journey into autumn. A pause in memory. The light of the sun in the wheel of the year stands now in the west, the place of the setting sun. This is a time of farewell and gratitude for the summer and the year, the harvest and the memories that have blessed us. With your respects now offered, the group begins to speak, each sharing stories of their journeys, laughter and life, with words and tales, respect and remembering. And from that place of remembering, of gathering, of warmth and of joy, perhaps we take a moment to take a stretch and a wiggle, maybe some deeper breaths. May the warmth of story and memory cast its light into your autumnal night. And if you wish, you can take a little stretch and gently open your eyes. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining me on this little journey of autumn myth and magic and folklore and fairy tale. I've just a few minutes left, so just to remind you, those lovely words came from the Kitchen Witch Companion and the Kitchen Witch, food, folklore and fairy tale. It's gone a bit blurry. There we go, let's come in. Wonderful. So as always, these books can be bought on all the usual places online, and you can always ask your local indie bookshop to order them in, or you can just join me on these regular little Zoom events to share a little seasonal magic. Thank you so much for joining me for this little journey, and I hope the rest of your October offers you warmth and nourishment. Go forth and have a really lovely rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Goodbye for now. Farewell. Bye.